Hey guys, welcome back to more neighbor stories. In this video, an entitled smug neighbor claims that he owns my trees and is entitled to turning them into firewood. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, Petty Revenge on My Jerk of a Neighbor. So I had an altercation with my jerk of a neighbor. Here's the backstory. I bought my first house last winter and moved into it last March, so I've been here just over a year. The house shares a private drive with several other houses, and the residents of our private driveway would collectively pay for snow removal, but this year the company that provided the service has stopped. The reason they will no longer service our private drive is the jerk neighbor would park his truck in a way that made it impossible for them to remove the snow without hand shoveling. So this meant this winter we had to hand shovel the private driveway ourselves. 3 times this winter myself and all of my neighbors, including a 75-plus-year-old man who has no business doing outside shoveling snow, hand shoveled the entire private drive, all except for jerk, that is. On one occasion, right as we finish shoveling, the jerk drives out the freshly shoveled driveway without even looking at us. As I understand it, jerk does not care about snow removal because he has a truck. According to him, his truck can get over snow fine, so he shouldn't have to pay for snow removal. Another thing that really irks me about this jerk is that he apparently bullies the elderly neighbor on our private drive. Earlier this week, I cut the grass and took the yard waste to the end of the driveway and dumped it 6 feet from the curb where the city comes to collect it. Last night I'm taking out the recycling and the jerk is at the end of the driveway in his truck. He says hello and then asks me, going forward, to move my yard waste 100 feet further away from the driveway because it supposedly is killing his grass. I say the grass died there because the city took 2 months to come and collect it last time. He says that he moved it for me this time, and it's then that I noticed that my pile of yard waste was moved an extra 100 feet further away. You see, I'm not always the best at dealing with spur-of-the-moment confrontation. I walked away at that point. I was livid though. I felt like a coiled spring ready to snap, but I thought for a minute, calmed down, and made a plan. I got home and told my GF to start the car and pick me up at the end of the driveway. We were on our way out. I had more to say to this jerk. I then walk back to the end of the driveway where the jerk is still waiting. I say, I'm gonna leave the yard waste there because that is where the city comes to collect it. As I point to the spot where I initially left it, I continue, if there's a problem with that, you can have the owner of the house contact me. He immediately goes, I'm the owner. And I cut him off with, as I understand it, you're a renter, is that correct? He nods his head. I say, that's fine, just have the owner contact me about anything. I actually need to talk to the owner about snow removal, so it would be great to talk to him. As I start walking away, he says, wait, just talk to me. And I go, no thanks, I'm only interested in talking to the owner. At that point, my GF made it to the end of the driveway and picked me up and we drove off. At this point, I felt vindicated. It's essentially the end of the story, but I noticed something odd when we came home later that night that gave me an extra kick of laughter. When we are pulling into the driveway, I noticed that the pile of yard waste was moved back to the initial spot, which implies jerk actually moved it twice. Note, technically the area I left the yard waste in is not jerk's property, it's not the owner's property either, it's actually city property. The city maintains the grass about 8 feet from the curb. I'm confident that land is technically theirs, meaning jerk was wrong anyway. And before we continue with the title story, please don't forget to like the video because that helps my channel tremendously in regards to not getting lost in the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much. This one is titled, Smug Neighbor Claims He Owns My Trees for Firewood. So I've lived in my house for at least 20 years now and have no intention of leaving anytime soon. I've had 3 different neighbors during my time living here, the first 2 being no problem to me and being lovely people all around. So when the 3rd neighbor moved in, I was rather shocked to find that he was certainly less accommodating and much more aggressive than the others. While he moved in, I was away on holiday. I felt bad about this as it meant I wasn't able to properly greet him on his first arrival in the neighborhood. However, I did fully intend to give him a warm welcome the second I got back. Those plans were slightly altered, however, when I did get back and saw the state of my front lawn. There were tire marks all over my grass, some of which had churched the grass into nothing but a squelchy mud. I was quite upset looking at it. I'm by no means a gardener or anything, but I'd spent quite a bit of time planting and growing the flowers that had once bloomed there. Now there was just mud. Furthermore, the grass would take me months to grow back, and spoiler, it did. I was not sure what had happened, to be honest, but decided to ignore it for a while and went over to my new neighbors. Hey, I'm your neighbor. I was away, so I haven't been able to properly introduce myself. I'm Todd. I stuck out my hand. My neighbor, who had answered the door rather aggressively, stared at my hand in disgust. I'm not shaking that. Alright, no worries. I assumed you must have something against germs or whatever the reason, it's not that deep. Have you seen the state of your garden? He asked. Yes, actually, it definitely wasn't like that before I left. I wonder what happened to it. Well, I know what happened. I just thought that you would have sorted it out by now, he replied. Oh well, in that case, would you mind telling me what happened? I asked after a silence, assuming he would continue. I guess. Another awkward silence. Go on. It was my van. It was your van? I asked. To clarify some things, the road here is huge and we both have rather large driveways, so there would be no reason for him to drive onto my lawn. Yep. Why? I asked. Why wasn't he just telling me? I needed a van to move my stuff in. He rolled his eyes. And it somehow went over my lawn what looks like 50 times? Yeah, I needed to get my door somehow. What about your massive driveway? Well, not off to a great start here. We went back and forth for a while with little to no progress. Apparently, only I could see how strange it was that he was just driving around on my lawn. I was not overly fussed, especially considering he was my neighbor. I didn't really want to start unnecessary fights. Well, okay then. Nice to meet you anyway. I finished, slightly perplexed. So why haven't you sorted it out? It is an eyesore. What on earth? Because I've been away while this was happening. I've literally only just gotten back. Well, please sort it out quickly. I don't want to have to inform the council. I nodded and walked over to my house. I did have to try quite hard to hold my tongue here. Clearly, this was not the happy neighbor I'm used to, and I had a feeling things were not gonna improve. Over the next few weeks, I began sorting out my lawn. It was quite therapeutic and nice little side hobby. Every day, however, my neighbor would come over and ask why it wasn't finished. I would explain that these things take time and remind him that it was his mess to begin with. He didn't seem to understand nor like that response, as every time he would just storm away. Now, this is not even the reason for our argument, but I thought it would be good to add that background so you can understand the type of person I'm trying to deal with here. For some more context into our houses, me and this neighbor share a property line. There's no division between our gardens except a small fence, which is more for decoration than anything. My past neighbors liked it and so do I. However, on my side of this fence, there are a few dozen trees. I love them and they give me some lovely shade into my garden and add some privacy. They are also gorgeous old oak trees that have been at this property for hundreds of years. Calling them aesthetic is an undersell. I do not chop these trees and they are purely there for the reasons I've listed. I do have a log burner, but the wood I use comes from a local sustainable tree farm. My neighbor also has one, but from the state of the smoke coming out of his chimney, it seems he is not using good wood. Most of you will know that you need to dry wood before you burn it, something he does not do. Anyway, one day I started to notice that his wood supply, which he keeps around the front, was diminishing more quickly than usual. He tends to stock it up once a week, but hasn't been for some reason. Around this time was also when some other people in the neighborhood began complaining about Ben, a name which I had to find out through someone else because he did not tell me. Most of the people I spoke to not had the great first experiences with Ben. He had even driven his van across several other corners of grass just to shorten his route when he was moving in. Back to the Firewood though, shortly after his stock had completely diminished, people began complaining that he was stealing their wood. Some had him on CCTV, others had just seen him. There was no doubt that he was doing this. It was brought to the attention of the council, who sent him a letter stating that he must stop or face further consequences. "Did you do this?" Ben asked angrily, storming over to me as I came back from my morning walk. "Do what?" I asked as he shoved the letter into my chest. I opened it and skimmed through the content. It pretty much just said, "Stop taking wood from your neighbors." I didn't have anything to do with this. You've not taken any from me. I shrugged, handing it back. Yeah, well, who else would it have been? Maybe the people you stole wood from? I sighed. Why would they have an issue with that? Why would they not? You cannot just trespass onto their property and take their wood. How else am I supposed to get wood? Well, I don't know. Buy it from the local farm down the road. It's not too expensive and it's great quality. I could pick some up for you next time I go. "I don't need your charity," Ben yelled and then stormed off into his house, crumpling up the paper and throwing it onto my lawn. "He's a piece of work," one of my other neighbors muttered as she passed. I replied, dreading whatever he would do next. I did not hear from Ben for the next few weeks. He seemed to just be keeping to himself in his house. However, soon I began noticing that my own wood supply began diminishing. I obviously wouldn't just accuse him, but it was pretty obvious it was him, especially when I saw him sneaking over with my own eyes. I decided to not start anything and just moved my wood inside, which ended up doing a lot worse. It took me a while to notice the thinning in my trees, but sure enough, a week later, I realized that 3 of my smallest trees had been cut down, their trunks the only remains. I was shocked and quite upset. The small trees were not as old as some of the others, but they were still meaningful to me. I didn't realize just how attached I'd gotten to these trees until I saw some missing. I knew I could not let Ben get away with this. It was more than just stealing wood. It was property damage and environmental crimes. "Ben, do you happen to know what has happened to my trees?" I asked after going over to his house. He shook his head and began shutting the door. I caught it with my foot though. That's a shame. Someone has cut down some of my trees, which means they were on both of our properties, no doubt. This doesn't bother you? Look, they are too close to my property. I cut them. Well, that didn't take much. "Do not cut down my trees again," I firmly stated. "They are practically on my land. Why can't I just chop them down?" He laughed. "They are not on your land, they are on mine, and to chop them down is vandalism. You will also have had to trespass to chop them. I'm telling you, don't cut my trees." I stared him down. Maybe I was being a tad too aggressive, but these trees did mean a lot to me, and I didn't want to take any chances that he might think I was not being serious enough. He nodded and shut the door, but I was not convinced. I headed over to our local DIY shop and bought a few signs that read "No trespassing" and pinned them to my trees. The next day I saw another tree missing, which infuriated me to no end. Clearly, he could not read. I decided to work from home for the few days following, as the only times he could cut the trees without me noticing were while I was at work. "What are you doing?" I yelled on one of these days, spotting him with an axe approaching my garden. He quickly fled back into his house. Over the next few weeks he made attempts to cut my trees down whenever he could. I stayed home as much as possible, ordered my groceries in, worked from home, canceled plans, etc. One plan I could not cancel was my sister's wedding, during which Ben cut down 2 trees. Once I got home, I confronted Ben again. He was rude and dismissive, claiming it was his right to cut down the trees and that he would not be stopping until they were all gone. After our final argument, I went and hid cameras all over my small forest, making sure they were not visible because I secretly wanted him to be caught so that I could get the proper justice I desired. The next day I headed to work and watched on the cameras as he now used a chainsaw to cut down another small tree, before he then headed over to one of the oldest oaks on my land. I practically ran out of work, but I did not think he would go for one of those. Only the stump of a massive tree remained when I came home later. I remember crying at the sight. It had seriously affected me. I did not bother going to confront Ben. I just went upstairs and called a lawyer. I wanted my justice now. After calling a lawyer and getting some advice, I hired an arborist to come over and survey the damage. Ben watched out of the window as this was happening. He looked smug. Did he really think he would get away with this? I'm terribly sorry about what has happened here. Given the maturity and ecological importance of these trees, you're looking at around $78,000 in losses. I was stunned. I did not realize just how valuable they were. The arborist handed me a detailed report that I could take to my lawyer. "What was all that about?" Ben asked, sauntering out of his house once the arborist had left. "Oh, nothing for you to worry about just yet," I replied with a grim smile. "What is that supposed to mean?" He scoffed. "Maybe get some of your savings out." I shrugged, scoffing back as I walked away. Ben followed. "Now, why would I do that?" "I'm gonna sue you." Ben laughed. "For what? Cutting a few trees? You won't get more than a penny." I smiled. "We will see." Ben at least looked a little bit stunned at this. I gave my lawyer everything I had: the CCTV footage, the deeds which clearly show the trees are on my property, the arborist report, and finally some images I had collected when Ben destroyed my lawn. A few weeks later we are in court with a very smug-looking Ben. He had not even bothered to get a lawyer. "You're wasting your time and money," he called as I walked to the stand. The judge shushed him while I stated my case. Then my lawyer showed all the evidence we had. Ben paled at the camera footage, but still stood his ground. "It's not illegal to chop a tree." He scoffed. "Actually, it very much is," the judge replied. "The arborist stated damages were $78,000, yes?" Ben yelled, "What?" slamming his hands down. "No, that has to be wrong. There's no way." "Silence," the judge yelled as she continued flicking through the evidence in front of her. I looked over at Ben, who was already looking over at me with such disdain it almost made me fall out of my chair. Then the judge began reading out her verdict, and his face paled. "You're fined with the damages to the tree, including the cost of recovery at $78,000. You're charged with trespassing and environmental destruction. You'll also be paying for all the legal fees occurred." Ben didn't say anything, he just began crying. To be honest, I did not even expect the fees to rack up that quickly. Ben moved out a week later to a small flat across town. He couldn't afford such a nice house anymore, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't glad to see him go. The rest of the neighborhood were similarly happy and agreed to help me replant the trees. Obviously, I was still saddened by the loss of my trees, especially the old oak, but the community came together to cheer me up, and some of the new saplings we planted have the potential to be around for hundreds of years to come. I also donated some of the money to a forest conservation organization, so hopefully any of the negative impacts of Ben's actions will slowly be reversed. And the next one is an XXL relationship drama story. It is titled, "I'm leaving because my boyfriend asked me first for a prenup." So I am 34 female, breaking up with my boyfriend 34 male because of a prenup. I've been with my boyfriend for about 2 years, everything is going well and we love each other. We've been discussing marriage and he mentioned he would not marry me without a prenup. We discussed this in detail and I did not like what he proposed. His family owns a lot of property, land and has lots of savings. After marriage he wants me to move into one of the houses his parents own. I told him that I'm uncomfortable building a life and a family in a house I have no ownership in, and he did not understand this. I told him I would prefer to rent a place together or we can live temporarily in one of his parents' houses and look at properties together, but he refused. He said he liked the houses his parents and he already owned. He said he would not buy other property, and he said he would not sell any of his property to buy one with me. He told me if I wanted to own property, I could save up money by living in one of these properties and invest in one myself. Well, the problem is he would be entitled to half if we divorce, since my purchase would happen after marriage. He told me that I could pay his parents' rent if I feel like I don't belong on the property. He told me I could buy half of the house we live in from his parents. The problem is I don't like the houses that him or his parents own. They also have a lot of stuff and I feel like there's no space for me. I want to look at houses, I want to pick the place I live in, and I want to do it with my partner. I've made this clear to him over and over, but he won't budge. He earns more than me and he has more assets than me for sure. He made it clear that he was afraid I was a gold digger and he wants to protect himself and his family assets from me, which I can understand. And by the way, if you are that afraid of someone, why are you even together with them? Then again, I'm not against a prenup, but obviously this boyfriend seems like he does not trust OP at all. Very strange relationship. Anyway, this whole thing has made me feel very weird. This topic has come up before and it has always made me feel very small. It makes me feel like all he cares about are his assets. It makes me feel like he wants me as long as I fit into the life he already built and doesn't care to build one with me. It makes me feel like I'm a gold digger. He has enough money to retire right now and live comfortably. I don't. He basically told me that whatever money he earns now he can spend, so he won't be investing in too much anymore. He expects our earnings and our savings after marriage to be split, which I feel off about, to be honest. I'm sure this is normal for some people. I'm sure other people would be happy to be with someone who was well off, but I am not. I want someone beside me building a life with me, not someone who has built a life with his parent and wants me as long as I behave and fit into his life, which is how he has been making me feel. So, I am leaving him. I welcome opinions on this, but yeah, it's been too long that this has made me feel off about our relationship. I'm protecting my peace and leaving him with all his houses and money. And now some relevant comments to the story. OP added some context to the prenup talk during their relationship. He mentioned the prenup very early and I would keep asking him about the details, but he would keep it very vague and assure me that he would work it out when the time came. I never asked him about his assets and I actually never knew how much assets his family had. The only things I knew were from some of his one-off comments about certain assets, if he mentioned this tenant or that tenant, or this thing they have to repair, etc. I'd also initiated these conversations, by the way. He mentioned wanting to live with me and work towards marriage. I figured then that time had come. This is when I sat him down and asked him what he expected from me, what he wanted, and to clarify the conditions of any prenups he wanted to propose. He still tried to dodge my inquiry. It took so long for me to pull this information out of him. I guess I did wait 2 years, but marriage talks seemed like the right time to push him to discuss it. And now we got an update to the story, but before you read this, I want your opinion on this story. Do you think OP is overreacting, or rather, what would you have done if you were in her shoes? Would you have continued with this relationship relationship, or you would have gotten out as quickly as possible to dodge an incoming bullet? Let me know in the comments. So, update, I know I'm missing parts, but I'll try to cover the important bits. Before I start, here's some important context. I have a stable and rewarding career, and though I don't earn as much as him, I'm very happy with what I can afford. My parents have always taught me that women should be independent, and I've taken that to heart. I live below my means, which has allowed me to put aside money for savings and investments. A lot of comments have mentioned that I should take the free rent and that it would somehow set me forward in life, but for me, giving up my sense of autonomy and control over my home, my safe space, is not worth the potential savings. I lived with my parents and saved aggressively until I was 30, so I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I can comfortably afford rent or a mortgage by myself. Plus, he expected the living situation to be permanent. I would not move into a house owned by someone else just to save on rent. Would it be nice to save $2,000 a month? Sure, but most people pay rent and I'm not an exception. If I really wanted that, I could move back in with my parents, but again, autonomy is very important to me. Also, if he is this stubborn now, I don't see how this situation could be improved later after I already moved in. I could also counter the prenup and make it so that all my accumulated assets stay mine, or put in a clause that I'll be compensated for any children we have, or put that I would get alimony or at least have a roof over my head in case we divorce. But for me, that feels overly transactional. It also gives me the vibes that I'm gonna be living with a roommate who I sleep with and might have babies with, not a partner. I prefer to feel like we are in it together. He can keep what was his, but I want to build up what is ours. Also, if everything is split completely, it will open up a new can of worms. How will our expenses be split if I'm working and he's just chilling? What happens when we have children? He has money saved for them, but will I get a say in how we spend that money? I know these can be worked out, but this is not the type of marriage I want. I cannot predict everything that will happen, and I don't think I can capture it in a contract. And it's already been so heartbreaking for me, I don't want to go through more. Anyways, yada yada yada, I will just say that it still felt like I was being stripped of my autonomy, stonewalled and treated like a hostile. On to the updates though. So I told him I needed to end this relationship. I appreciated and truly enjoyed my time with him, but our financial values and the preferred married lifestyle just don't match. It was a quick and easy conversation, to be honest. I expected the breakup to be a bit of a process, not a one and done thing. And well, since our lives overlap a lot, I'm also in contact with a lot of his family, so of course during this whole time, a lot of them got involved. But anyway, blah blah blah, not super relevant to the updates. So I talked with his parents, and okay, I love his parents, I had a great relationship with them. I would go over to their house, we would have food, chat, watch TV, sometimes I would go to the party, stay host without my ex if he was busy. A few days after my talk with my ex, I went over to say goodbye. I didn't know if the prenup was family enforced or not, so I kept it very general and mainly focused on how the situation made me feel and what I was looking for in a relationship. His parents were shocked Pikachu face when I told them why I was leaving. I'm gonna bullet point the rest. So his parents really want grandbabies, however, the ex's younger brother and sister-in-law do not want kids. They were so happy when I came into their lives and she found out that I wanted kids. His parents had created their wealth together, with his dad being the major breadwinner for most of the relationship. His mom was shocked at what he was offering me, saying these are not the values he was raised with. She had been effectively retired since almost 15 years ago, and she said ex's dad never made her feel uncomfortable because of the difference in earning potential. They told me that they built their assets for themselves and their children, and they said that includes whoever their children decided to share their lives with. They have many properties, however they also have enough investments that they can live off of those. They told me their plan was to sign over a house of our choosing as a wedding gift or sell a house and give us cash so we could buy a house we both wanted. As they got older, they planned to evenly divide their properties between my ex and his brother, since they would not want to manage the properties anymore and live off investments. Ex's mom said she would have made sure my name was on my ex's portion, especially since we were wanting kids. They also mentioned that investments will go directly into funds for grandkids after their passing. Maybe this is what my ex was referring to when he said his children would be set. A bit morbid though, to be honest. Anyway, ex's mom told me that the mother of her grandbabies would be taken care of, and she wanted us to be on equal footing while raising a family. To be honest, this conversation was kind of like a weight off my chest. I always loved his family and never felt excluded, but the prenup talks left me confused and hurt. What they said fit with what I knew from my ex and them before. I would be lying if I said I didn't start imagining this life. Anyway, I talked to my ex again. I will bullet point this too. Basically, he told me that his dad had joked before about how he hoped him and his brother would not find gold diggers, and that's where that comment came from. He felt responsibility to protect his parents' assets since he didn't feel entitled to them, so by extension I was not entitled either. In his culture, sons carry on the family line, so he felt he had to keep his assets in the family line, which I'm not part of, but any sons we had would be. Most of the assets he is worried about are under his parents' name, and he had never asked for their opinion on what to do. Basically, he just did what he thought he should be doing. He also said he is not that well off and that his assets should not come between us. This is still confusing to me. Isn't this whole thing because he was well off and wanted to hold on to what he had and not create a shared lifestyle? I think maybe he meant he did not own much and most things actually were under his parents' name. Anyway, he felt he was punching above his weight with me and was scared that I would leave him. He was afraid I was with him because of the finances, since that was the only thing he had more of, whereas he said I'm intelligent, hardworking, beautiful, blah blah blah. He was scared about moving forward with the relationship, but instead of communicating, he became defensive. To me, it seems like he said and did things because he was feeling deeply insecure. He had made a couple passing comments before about me being more beautiful than him, or how I am more hardworking, etc., but I'd always taken them as compliments, not self-deprecating comments towards himself. He is such a caring, funny and intelligent person, just in a different way than me. Also, I know he is not as confident as he comes across, but I had no idea that his insecurities ran this deep. He also apologized over and over about how he didn't mean to make me feel like an outsider to him and his parents, and insisted that he wanted to share a life with me. He said his insecurities and fear got the best of him, and he did not handle it well. He had taken advantage of my patience and lashed out because he felt inadequate and scared. It broke my heart because I think all this could have been avoided. We've been through this song and dance before many times where he would feel some sort of way and then act out as he is processing it. Until now, I always stay through it and we move on, but it's never gone on for so long, but I guess the issues we have faced before were smaller compared to mapping out our whole lives. I've pushed him to seek individual counseling and we've attended couples counseling together, but I cannot force him to sit and identify his emotions or employ the tools we were taught. The prenup conversation happened over a long period of time. We had so many chances to pump the brakes and reflect on what he was saying and simply just listen to me. But he didn't. He then sat in front of me saying that everything he said before was not what he meant. He said he would be happy to take care of me and our future kids, we could buy a house together or rent if I wanted to, because now he was not scared about creating a life together anymore, complete opposite to everything he had been saying before. But how unsettling is it that he seemed so completely comfortable and confident in the hurtful words he previously said and was okay with placing me in a very unequal position in the relationship. Despite me continuously trying to articulate what I wanted and how he was making me feel, he did not even consider my side over months. I know I have a good deal with what his parents are offering, and I know him and I get along super well, but I'm not marrying his parents. I cannot have his mom with us during every argument or life decision we take. Thinking back, I can count on one hand where we have run into issues and he was able to address it without acting up. Honestly, he's such a nice guy, but I cannot be his garbage bin every time he needs to sort out his feelings. It's already worn me down. He's a grown man, he's intelligent and intuitive, and he's had 2 years to learn how to communicate with me. And he is not. I honestly cannot tell if what he said to me is genuine or coming from his parents or coming from a fear of losing me. I could give him the benefit of the doubt again and move forward with the relationship as I've done in the past, but I'm tired. I think this is a fixable problem, but I also have not seen any improvements since we started dating. If anything, this prolonged experience has made me feel it's gotten worse. I will not make the mistake of investing in a man because of what he could be instead of who he actually is. If the last few months are a testament to how he handles stressful situations, I can only take things as they are and assume that they won't change. This whole thing has left me sour. Honestly, I don't need too much, but I do expect to be treated with love and support even during times of disagreement. I cannot just forget the feelings and words I have felt and heard over the last couple months. I cannot just unhear and unknow that he's afraid I'm a gold digger. That was just one of many comments that really hurt me. I think life will have a lot more ups and downs, and I cannot imagine what kind of difficulties we'll face if this is how we communicate even after identifying the issue and working on it in therapy. For these reasons, I'm still choosing to walk away. Very different from leaving because of a prenup, but it is leaving nonetheless. And to be honest, this hurts more. I know it will hurt for a while, but I pray I'll be avoiding heartache and complications in the future. Who knows? If it was meant to be, maybe we'll find our way back, but for now I've told him and his family that I need space and time. I know that it seems like I'm giving up a lot, but of course there are things I cannot put in a post. I actually wrote the above quite early, but I didn't post because I didn't feel like it was over, but now after this time, I know it is. It's been tough and it's only been a couple of months, but I'm sure I made the right call. It is tough watching everyone coupled up and having children, but it is what it is. I'm proud of myself for leaving, and I am slowly healing. And yeah guys, I would say OP definitely made the right decision here. You should not be pressured by what other people do. If they are having children, I mean, that's fine, but if you have not found the right person yet, I would say it's better to have children later than to have kids with the wrong partner. Anyway, let me know what you thought about this story in the comments. I'm very curious about what you have to say. And before we end the video, let's read one last funny story from r/pettyrevenge. It is titled, "A tradie blocked me in and would not move." So years ago, my neighbor, shared driveway, was having work done and the guys parked on the driveway. I asked them to move as I was about to go out, and they said it was all good and they wouldn't be there long. Well, because they couldn't or wouldn't move, I ended up bringing the friend I was meeting to come pick me up instead, and when we got back from our outing and picking up her son, they were still parked in the driveway. My friend was gonna park on the road, but I told her to drive up behind them and turn the car off. I then turned and asked her 4-year-old to tell me again all about his first school visit that day and what he got up to. The guy came and asked my friend to move, and I leaned over and said, "It's all good, we won't be long." He went back to sit in the truck, and when I finally thought he had sat for long enough and the little dude in the back seat was getting hungry, I got out and got a very sheepish sorry from the truck cab. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please check out my playlist for endless ripe content, and I will see you again tomorrow.